David Brewster here with another 3 for All, and this is 3 Alex Skolnick licks from 2018. And Alex Skolnick is a monstrous, guitar player. I know when I first noticed him in the guitar magazines, and I heard that he studied with Joe Satriani. I mean, any of those players, that studied with Joe. I mean, Steve Vai and Kirk Hammett, Alex Skolnick and the gang. When I caught wind of the fact that Satriani taught people, famous people, I immediately started to go through those players, and there's some other ones that are kind of lesser known, and who knows, I might sneak some of those in, like a 3 for All or a rant video or something. But as soon as I heard that Alex studied with Joe Satriani, I hadn't even really heard Testament, maybe just a little bit on like Headbangers Ball or something. But then when I found that out, I was like, wait a minute, this guy studied with Satch. And then, then I started paying attention to Alex Skolnick and started listening to Testament's music, started buying some of their albums. And I just kind of became a fan. It was kind of a gradual thing, because I knew who he was and I recognized, his name and his look, was very distinct with the white skunk stripe, like in his hair and stuff. I was like, who is this guy? And then just slowly over time, I started to really admire his playing and really, kind of got into his music. And he's obviously a thrash metal, legend, but he also studied jazz in New York. He's got a degree in jazz performance and stuff. So here's a kind of just a brief, background on Alex Skolnick here. Aside from Testament, he's worked with a bunch of groups. He recorded with Lamb of God, he worked with Ozzy Osbourne, Savatage, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and there's a lot of groups and artists that he's worked with. So here's an image, kind of revealing some of his resume. So there's something unique and interesting, about a thrash metal, shred guitarist that also has a, degree in jazz performance. So that right there should tell everybody watching this that Alex Skolnick's a force to be reckoned with. He can obviously, play metal. He could shred and do all these wicked things, with the guitar solos and stuff like that. But then he also has an education and a mind, for jazz and music and arranging and chord progressions and modal tonalities and exotic scales and all this stuff. So there's some really cool stuff, hiding in this lesson. The licks in this video come from a live bootleg that I found from the Thrash Domination performance in Japan. That was in 2018. And it was like this huge, thrash, metal concert. I think it was Testament, Exodus, and Warbringer, I think was the other band that was there. And if you see the the video footage that I kind of cut up for these 3 licks, you can see it's a massive concert. And you can also tell when Alex did this solo, he was pumped. There's probably a huge crowd. You can't really see how many people are in the crowd, but you can tell, his adrenaline and everything is just peaked because he looks like he's really into it. And it's a random solo. It starts off, he's shredding, he's tapping, there's some cool licks, and then eventually he starts playing like little pieces of Eruption and stuff, and some other random, riffs and songs. I think Have a Drink on Me from AC/DC popped in somewhere. So it's kind of a random solo where it's licks and famous riffs and part of Eruption and some other things happening. But I definitely like these ideas that I kind of tapped into and selected here. Okay, so this first lick's kind of flirting with A harmonic minor, and he's doing a really interesting kind of targeted idea to bring out the sound of that A harmonic minor flavor. So you can kind of think he's basically resting on the 5 chord, if you were thinking of a chord progression, even though this isn't a song, it's just a live solo. But if you think of that 5 chord, like E7, and then it resolves, to A minor, you're pulling out that harmonic minor flavor. So he's kind of playing loosely. You can see harmonic minor right there. So you can see the scale right there. But he's also kind of mimicking at different times, the Mixolydian pentatonic scale, which I did a really early lesson on the Late Night Lessons channel, where I talked about Mixolydian pentatonic. That was one of the first lessons I ever made here. And that would be here. mixolydian pentatonic in E, but you're implying, or kind of gravitating more toward, an A minor resolution, it's going to sound like harmonic minor big time, because you're flirting with that E7 and then resolving to A, so that brings out harmonic minor. You kind of hear that resolution right there. So the lick sounds like this. And I really like that kind of quick, kind of flutter, happening in there. And then he's fluttering and going to, to E. And then he flutters and goes to D. And then does it again and goes to B. And then to A. And then G sharp. Just to really drive home that harmonic minor sound. And you can finger that a couple different ways, but I like that big Malmsteen kind of exaggerated bend, and then he starts doing those little, flutter moves, and he's using that F and G sharp, as the flutter notes, I guess. But something like this. Really cool lick. The next lick, we're kind of staying in that A harmonic minor tonality or flavor, but once again, he's kind of creeping into this mixolydian pentatonic in, E or E7. So I don't know if he's intentionally, thinking that, but that's the first thing I noticed when I started to uncover these licks. It was like, hey, he's kind of playing around with that mixolydian pentatonic a little bit. So this one's really cool because he's kind of doing like a standard, stock bending move in the beginning, and then he drifts down that mixolydian pentatonic and then ends it with yet another kind of Malmsteen or Ritchie Blackmore kind of string bend. So it sounds like this. And I like that really powerful, sound. He's putting a lot of, kind of energy or conviction into those notes. Maybe pick just a little harder than you normally would, just to kind of accent, some of those areas in there. And I really like that little half-step wound bend there. I just kind of screwed it up there, but very expressive, and it really draws interest, hanging on that last note. And you'll definitely hear Yngwie do that a lot, but that comes from Baroque music. You can trace that all the way back, to the 1700s if you want to. The last lick is, it kind of moves up a whole step, and then he's kind of, mixing around now with F sharp 7 instead of E7. So he's still playing with that same harmonic minor, kind of teasing you with that flavor, but it's moved up a whole step. And this is just a melodic phrase that has some really cool, accented notes, and I like the way he kind of orchestrated this melodic idea. So it starts off, and we're targeting the root, F sharp right there. And then he's basically moving back to D and E, goes back to that F sharp, and then bends it into G and back. And then a hammer-on pull-off to C sharp. From that D, E, D, and then slide down to C sharp. And then right there, he slides into F sharp, and then he basically starts climbing up this little partial arpeggio or scale. So you could think of that as a partial scale, I guess. But he's also kind of flirting with the arpeggio a little bit there too. And then he moves up to G. Then he, grabs that F sharp, grabs the G again, and then bends it up a whole step. Like that. Something like this. here's Alex himself playing it. And one more time just for good measure. So I definitely like Alex's playing. He's very exciting and interesting. He's always doing something, you know, that kind of catches your ear, catches your attention. He's always done that, even way back, you know, in the very beginning of, you know, Testament's career. So leave some comments and some feedback. Let me know if you got anything from this lesson, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more chord play and 3 for all and other content very soon. Thank you.